everyone. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we were asking everyone, so I almost didn't answer for a second.
Well, you don't include yourself in everyone?
Yeah, usually.
You do or you do not?
I mean, sometimes I want to be different from everyone.
Yeah.
So
if someone says, hey, everyone, you're like, nope, not me.
if they said, hey, y'all, maybe, I don't know why, that would make me more inclined to think of it as myself.
So you associate more with y'all than everyone?
Sure.
Okay. So that little STEM word in there, every, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, every. How's your Monday going?
Great. Just swimmingly. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's not cheers.
Not cheers over the iPad anymore.
Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, February 7th. Today is episode 87.
Ooh.
Which is within the year 2022. February 7th. Does that mean anything special to you, Danielle?
Now I feel like it should.
It's not a quiz. I just, you and your numbers and stuff. I thought maybe there was...
No, the cool day was last week. 2-2. 2-2. And then we're going to have February 22nd, which will be a great day, too.
2?
Yep, for twos. Great day for twos. 2.
Well, that's good. What if you had to pick your perfect date? What would it be?
March 16th, because it's my birthday. I like my birthday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a light jacket, or you do need a light jacket?
Yeah, you probably need a light jacket still. I mean, if you need one in April.
Well, I guess it all depends on where you live or where you are at.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, on Friday, we had a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was called Fun Friday. And among some other things, we talked a little bit about your nanny.
Yes.
Your nan. Which evidently, I guess that term's not quite as popular here in the U.S. as it is over in the U.K. But in honor of your nanny, we have us a hot cuppa here.
Yes.
Of our tea. Here's to you, Nan. Cheers. This is the part of the episode where they wonder if there's whiskey in our tea. We'll just have to let them wonder.
Oh, I was going to answer for you since I, put stuff in there without telling you before. But there is nothing in there today.
Okay.
I was going to confirm.
Nice. So we talked about your nanny, and one of the reasons we talked about her was because, one, she had an interesting life.
Actually interesting, not her definition of interesting.
Right, and one of the things we talked about was how she uses the term interesting, which, is not too far off how other people use it. So you guys could check out that clip from Friday to see how that lines up with you. But her life was interesting because she met a guy, also known as your grandpa, and then within a few weeks they were talking about marriage. And just to be clear on who she met, he was an American soldier who happened to be on leave from his station in Germany or something like that. And then after a couple of weeks of courting, I guess, while he was on leave, they were so smitten with each other that she ended up leaving the country, which was England. She had never left before. Not only leaving, but leaving permanently, going abroad, leaving the country to go to America to marry your grandpa, which especially, like back then, that type of thing I feel like was maybe a little more common, but today that just sounds so weird when you put it out there, right? And I think it was always weird.
And
it's just
I don't think it was necessarily all that common back then.
Well,
I feel like, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I mean, I guess let me put it this way. I mean, I've heard many times and seen it in the picture books, the moving pictures, about someone like going to America or sending their spouse to America to find a better life, right? You know, goes up straight up with that American dream or whatnot. But when you say it out loud in a sentence, it's like, yes, I am moving, I don't know, 10,000 miles away from my home. I'm flying, which was not like overly common that much at that time. It was like the 60s or something like that. 50s?
50s?
Yeah, 50s. And
Late 50s?
never
I
been
don't
on
know
a
that we ever
plane. Never
confirmed.
been on a plane before. And then I'm going to go spend time with this person who is from a completely different country than us. And I've only met them for a couple weeks. And it's very expensive probably to get back if I wanted to come back. And I have no job there. But yet, here we go. Here we go. So yeah, so I don't know. I thought it was interesting. And I don't know, we'd connected the dots until a Friday when we're like, oh, well, your grandma was the original vagabond. She said, you know, what's that cheesy phrase? Not all who wander are lost. So
But she got lost.
She got lost.
I think there was some.
On the trip.
The layover or missed connection flight. Something happened. But
So we talked a little bit about her story, and then a couple of other little small stories from her life that were fun. One, we talked about it because she was interesting, but two, also because she tells her story, which we thought was a really interesting thing, and we encourage people to do that. And that actually led to our challenge for the day, which was to interview somebody that you know. You know, it could be a loved one, it could be a friend, it could be a random person. But just having the intentional act of interviewing somebody is something that I feel like 99.9% of people actually never get interviewed. And so I was like, well, it doesn't need to be some big media event. Just have that conversation, have that intentional conversation, and learn a little bit more. And you could maybe surprise, like, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, Dad fought off 5 people with nothing but his utility belt in the alleyway. You never know.
yeah. Tell me if you ever hear any stories like that.
So that was on Friday. So with that, let us jump back to today. Helpful for life. Welcome to What the Hell is Water? I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
And I'm Danielle Garcia of DanielleMGarcia.com.
And today is February 7th, 2022. This is episode 87 coming at you. And our title for today, at least for now, is Intentional Manifesting. WTF does it mean, and how do I do it? Yeah, so there's 2 words to this title. The first one is intentional, and the second one is manifesting. Which one of those would you like to tackle first?
Maybe intentional.
What a great choice. So when you read the word intentional, what does that mean to you?
I think it means that you've basically like evaluated options and like decidedly determined that like this is what you want, or this is the course of action. So then I guess it's making an analytical choice in how to proceed forward. I don't know. That's hard to define, because intentions are a thing, intentional is a thing. So yeah, maybe help.
Maybe help. That's good. No, so intentions, intentional. I mean, those are all kind of in the same vein, using that same root word. But yeah, I would say if you're doing something with intent, right? That's kind of the main core of the word there. It means I am putting energy and will behind it. It's like, it's not like something I did accidentally. That would be kind of the opposite that I would think about. It's like, no, I didn't accidentally choose that. I chose that for a very specific reason. So, a phrase we use on here all the time is separating the do from the think. And so if you're going to be intentional about something, by definition, as Danielle was just talking about, you're going to have to think about it. You're going to have to, look at whatever options there are and then say, okay, I want this one, I don't want that one. I am going to intentionally choose that one. So that's what the intentional part means from our term today. What about manifesting? What does manifesting mean to you?
I think maybe like the shortest way I can think of to say it is making something real, maybe. I don't know why, it's just like a question. That's what manifesting means to me. Making something real, or like making it happen.
Yeah, bringing it into existence, maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So manifesting. So the stem man is in there, which I remember means like hand, and maybe work
Like
as
manual.
well, like manual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fest party. Yeah. Like festival.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's a hand party. Those are my favorite kinds of parties.
Well, I think it was like, so like the hand part to me, I think that means like the work part. Like you put in the work, and then you have a festival to celebrate once you like do the thing and make it real.
Oh, I like it. You like to have them separate, huh? But yeah, so some other words that include that stem would be manifest. Or sorry, we're talking about manifest. Manuscript, manufacturer, manicure. Like we mentioned, manual. But so yeah, so intentionally. So putting some thought into it, making a selection, putting energy and will behind something, which I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with manifesting, which is putting something into existence, creating something, or aligning the stars to go a certain way to help you do the thing that you want. So at least the way I thought about it when we were talking about the term is, all right, if you're going to intentionally manifest something, you're going to think in advance and say, all right, hey, here is the thing that I want to do, or here's the way I would like things roughly to go. And then I'm going to put my energy, I'm going to put my will behind it. I'm going to tell other people to get them involved, to get them helping. And then I'm going to try and create something out there in the world, or I'm going to try and encourage things to go a certain way. And so if I'm going to intentionally manifest something, it allows me to basically bring something into the world, but being very, it's hard to not use the word intentional as you're defining it, but being very intentional about it and saying that
particular?
It's like, this is what I'm doing and I'm going to do it, and like, I don't know, like determined and dogged. So I guess let's talk a little bit more about the word manifest. What's your history with that word? I mean, I feel like sometime within the last few years it started to mean a little bit more to you as you heard it in other contexts.
Yeah, I think I first really started hearing about manifesting as a concept when I started getting more into journaling and personal development, like self-development, books and bloggers as a whole. So when people would write about goal setting, or sometimes it was like, oh, I'm manifesting a new opportunity into my life, or people would say things like, oh, I feel like I manifested this person in my life because I was like, telling these other people about what I was trying to do, and then they were like, oh, you need to connect with this person. And so literally it just means like, well, I forget where I was going with that really, but I guess, and then there's a whole style of journaling that is intended to manifest your life, because there's a practice called scripting, where you write about your life as if it is in the future. So you write down the date, like you would write February 7th, 2023, and then start writing like, oh, I'm so grateful that I published my book by the end of 2022, and like write about all these things that you hope have already happened by that point, from the words of they've already happened and I'm grateful for them. And that's supposedly aligning yourself with the intentional values and energy that will help you make that real in your life.
So basically you're talking about having the shift of where it's say, hey, I'm going to talk about this thing as if it's already happened in the past.
Yes.
And by doing that, there's the mindset shift where it's like, okay, well, I've already decided it's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just a matter of making it happen, and going with that kind of confidence and that mindset can help you psychologically get around it, things like that. And then some people even argue doing this type of thing has spiritual implications as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay, well, by doing that, by putting that out into the world, I am encouraging whatever other energies or gods or whatnot may be out there to work in my favor and help me make this thing happen.
Yes. And so, and then another book and movie that I was exposed to when I started, researching more about personal development and journaling was the concept of The Secret and the law of attraction. How familiar are you with that?
Well, why don't you enlighten me?
I mean, I've watched The Secret on Netflix, and I think it was watching that where it was the first time my mindset shifted, because I had been like on this quest for purpose and more fulfillment in life, and going from like when I was changing up my career and finding like, oh, I wanted to find my purpose. Like what is the thing that once I start doing will feel more fulfilling or more right than all the other things? And The Secret, watching that, there was a quote from, I don't know if it was the author or one of the contributors, but it said something about like humans tend to see purpose like this assignment on a big blackboard in the sky, that the teacher, like God is the teacher, and he's assigning you this, and like this is your predestiny, and you must go find this thing to do in order to fulfill my purpose for placing you on this earth. And the quote was like, no, that's actually not how purpose is. God gives us free will and desires and interests and hobbies, or like chasing your passion, because you create your purpose by deciding what to live every day. And like you can have 1,000 different purposes over the course of your life. And yeah, so that was kind of cool. Like I had been seeing purpose more of like the predestination part of God's will for our life, and then it's actually like, no, that's the free will part that God has given us.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about it, because when you talk about predestination, there's a couple of things, right? So one is there's like omniscience, right? And which is being all knowing, right? Then there's omnipotence, which is being all powerful. And if you look at those words, omni means all. Or maybe many as well. But so omniscience is how it's spelled, omniscience. So psi, I think, is like mind, knowledge, something like that. So omniscience is like all knowing, whereas power is like power, something like that. So all powerful, all knowing. But when you look at something like predestination, which is, I believe is it, if they're knowing that it's happening, or it's just saying it is going to happen? I forget.
I think it's just maybe saying the concept that there is destiny, like that there is a way, or there is something that it was always going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
that's a weird one to define too.
I think for me, the way I think about it is with predestination is, I think that a God, if you're looking in the Christian faith, I think that God knows everything that's going to happen. And some people struggle with whether or not that's separate from free will. Because it's like, hey, if he already knows all this stuff's going to happen, then how is that different from, or how can I have free will if he already knows everything that's going to happen, right? But just because he knows what eventually you'll choose, again, talking about the Christian faith here, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the choice to choose it, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's one thing, when we're talking about intentional manifesting, you're basically saying, and you were talking about the book called The Secret, which was also turned into a Netflix movie. So we've linked those in the chat. What's the, just real quick though, I don't know if you said the book
Mm.
or the movie The Secret, what is it about?
Okay, so basically, the law of attraction is talked about as one of the laws of the universe that basically like attracts like. So the scripting exercise, the journaling exercise, is based on the principle of the law of attraction, I guess, where you're putting something out there, and by speaking it more often into existence, or just like that process of intentionally realizing what you want and then writing it every day, or like making a goal that you're focusing on every day, it makes it more likely to become real in your life. And
So that's the law of attraction.
yeah.
And then that, are you saying, is what this book is about, The Secret?
Mm-hmm. It's like sharing the secret with others so that they can then start telling other people about what they want for their life.
Yeah, so I haven't read this myself or seen the movie.
I have not read the book,
okay,
actually.
but basically it seems like the whole point of this, the whole shtick of it is, hey, there's this quote-unquote secret that once you figure it out, it makes everything easier, makes everything better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and that is just putting what you're trying to do out into the world and starting to try and make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And using that, one of the terms is manifestation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other terminology along this was what?
Law of attraction?
The law of attraction.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. That was the other one I was looking for. So the law of attraction, putting stuff out there, making it happen. I want to make sure to point out there's a TED Talk that I think is perfect for this, and it's called,
I was about to bring that up too.
Isolation is the Dream Killer, Not Your Attitude, and it's by Barbara Sher, and she in that talks about, basically, she's giving her talk, right, and she's out there, and there's this audience, like this auditorium, and she's like, look, the thing is like, we all like think that the things we want to achieve are impossible, and all we see are the obstacles that we need to overcome to get to them, and we don't realize, like, once you start to put things out there, just how simple and easy it actually can end up being. And then she calls out to the audience, like, this is a completely unscripted thing, and she's like, all right, who's got something they're trying to achieve or whatever, it doesn't matter how crazy. And then someone like stands up and they say something like, I forget the order she does it, but one of the ones I remember, she's like, I want to dance with Patrick Swayze. And it's like, okay, and everyone goes, ha ha ha, yeah, that's funny, me too.
And this was back when he was alive.
Oh, I forgot he was dead.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah. Thank you for the relevant comment.
So like, it was still possible.
It was still possible. So everyone's like, yeah, how's she gonna get out of this one? And then, less than 30 seconds later, somebody stands up and says, oh, I work at a spa where he comes to once a year for a week, and he's actually a really nice guy. I think he would totally be down. And you're like, oh, okay. And then someone stands up with another thing, and it's like somebody else is like, oh, well, I can connect you with this, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, and I'm not going to know the whole thing, and it's been a while since I did it, but it's just very powerful, and it's a very good reminder to me. And that was, there's this phase where a lot of entrepreneurs go through, or people who want to be entrepreneurs, is like the kind of like shelling up phase. It's like, oh, I've got this idea and I'm not going to tell anyone about it. And it's going to be a secret, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to change the world. And they like protect the idea. They protect this nugget as if like they tell somebody it's going to spoil it or something like that. But then eventually, hopefully most entrepreneurs realize, like, no, that's not actually the case, because all those sleepless nights you're having trying to make that thing happen, that's the part most people don't want to do. So it's one thing to have that idea. It's another thing to make it happen, right? Because a lot of people are worried about, if I share my idea, someone else is going to steal it and go do it.
Or not even that. It's just sometimes it's hard to, like, even if you don't think it's like, oh, this is the idea that's going to change the world and I must hoard it away so it's not stolen, there's still like the shelling up of like, oh, this is my idea and it's like a little baby, and I guess I don't really know how I feel about it until I know like how others are going to feel about it. And then, but self-promotion is hard. And so you just, don't share about your idea for other reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're worried about failing. Maybe you realize that when you start creating something is like, oh, like I have to make all of the decisions for this thing. And
I have to be all of the job roles.
And if anything's wrong with this, then I don't have anyone else to blame but myself. I can't complain about my coworkers and my manager anymore. Like, oh, it's just me.
Yeah.
And so that happens a lot of times. But the magical shift for me or whatever was the more and more I heard, like, no, tell everyone about your idea. And that was one thing that was really cool. When I was quitting my job, I started to tell, people at work, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this entrepreneurship thing. And then there were people who I literally worked with for years, and they're like, oh, I actually did the entrepreneurship thing for a little bit. I'm like, we've worked for years. Like, how have we never talked about that? And it's like, it's not like we're just like those kind of people where you're like, oh, we just talk about, the kids at the water cooler. Like, these are people I legit considered at least strong acquaintances, if not friends, right? And I was like, man, well, I'm really glad you told me about that, and now maybe I've learned a little bit about this, and I can keep that in mind as we move forward. And I know you can relate a little bit more and all these types of things. And in my case, it's not like any one of those things particularly changed the complete path of my company or like uncovered the magical connection to finding the allspark or something like that. But it was a good moment for me, a good reminder to me, like, hey, all these people who are around you, like, until you tell them like what you're trying to do, like, they're not gonna know how to help you, or much less want to help you, because they have no idea that you're trying to do the thing. But if you put it out there and you say, hey, I'm trying to do this thing, a lot of times people want to help. And so that's a big part of intentional manifesting in my mind, is getting it out there into the world, telling other people about it, using the law of attraction, and saying like, hey, this is a thing that we're trying to do. We think is important. We think it's valuable. We think it's going to make the world a better place, or make me a better person, or make you a better person, whatever it may be. Now, will you guys help me make it happen? And if you go with that pitch to some of your friends and family, and they all like say no or whatever, then there's a couple things. One, okay, are those the right people for you? Maybe they're not supporting you, giving you the things you need. And, oh, by the way, maybe you need to get that love, support from elsewhere. Maybe your family isn't the one for that, or your friends aren't the ones for that. But yeah, I don't know. Of course, there's always a possibility your idea sucks, but in my mind, it's better to have a bad idea and try and make something happen with it than to never try and make anything with anything, which I feel like is what most of us probably end up doing, right? We're like so afraid of the failure and the judgment and all that kind of stuff that we never even get started. So this makes me think of our episode with Kaylina Cahill we had on a couple weeks ago, and one of the things she did was she did a 365 project where every day she made an illustration, and it was like, yeah, part of that process is just being okay with knowing that everything I'm going to make is not going to be great. And so a similar concept of repetition we've talked about, with being okay with having the bad ones, and just like quantity, getting to the greatness through quantity, not just quality. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Like that, the people who took more pictures ended up with better pictures than the people who were just trying to take one good picture. I feel like y'all have talked about that study or that professor assignment before.
Yeah, that was a different episode, but we did talk about that as well, where it's like, hey, or actually no, maybe it was with Kaylina as well, because we talked about photography and we talked about analog versus digital. And it was like, oh yeah, when you used to have the disposable camera, you only had 25 shots. You had to be very, very intentional about it. Had to decide. You had to go physically make the print and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, all right, when it comes to intentional manifestation, Danielle, so what are some of the things that you do now that you've learned a little bit more about it when you want to intentionally manifest something? What do you do now that you're like aware of these things out there?
Well, I do a lot of writing down my ideas in my journals. I would say that's probably the majority of my diary notebooks now are like an open checkbox with an exclamation point, which is my bullet journaling symbol for idea. Like, add this to your digital idea bank later. So writing down the ideas, I guess, is the first step. So you don't forget it and it's out of your head. And then I guess reviewing your journals and doing a sort of like values prioritization, maybe like picking from, okay, there's all these possibilities, or there's all these ideas, opportunities. Maybe like you have a decision to make about like what you need to focus on most immediately for like changing habits or whatever. Basically like creating your own short list based on your values and prioritization. And then, getting people on your side. Like when I wanted to lose weight last year, and I was like, I really don't want to count calories. I want to do it by like lifestyle changes to where I don't have to think about managing my weight every day. And so I was like, oh, well, I really want to get back into horseback riding and have that as like a weekly activity and exercise. And I want to, my friend was starting teaching a dance fitness class. And so I asked my mom to go with me, because then you have that buddy where like, oh, I wouldn't probably go if it, like I would decide to just stay home if it was just me, but because I have that other person that I've told that I'm trying to do this, and now we can encourage each other and have like these shared manifestation goals of manifesting movement and more activity and a more healthful lifestyle on a weekly basis. Like, you know, making those putting systems in place, I guess, to help make changes real, because like it's you making the changes that manifests the change in your life. So it's very like, I see it as, a very like self-empowered, like a life design exercise, really, is how I see manifestation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is a lot of people don't realize like how simple it is to change your life, how simple it is to improve your life.
How simple yet difficult.
Right. And I wanted to make sure people recognize I use the word simple, not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Although it certainly can be easy. I think it's a lot easier than people give it credit for, but I was very specific to not use the word easy there, because a lot of times it just takes one step or two steps and starting to move in that direction. And then the momentum can kind of take over from there. And then it's kind of like, okay, I start to do a little bit better in this area of my life, and then I start to benefit from it, and I start to feel like the good things about that. And then that benefits me because it was a good thing in my life. But also now I feel better because I wanted to make a change, and I made a change, and now I have that, which makes me feel better, which makes me have a little more energy and drive to do more, to improve in other areas of my life. And then it just kind of keeps building and building and snowballing until next thing you know, you've got the giant snowball that is crashing down the mountain ready to kill everybody, which is what we're all about here at Helpful for Life. Killing everybody with your giant snowballs. And we've mentioned that at least one other time.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when.
Somehow I remember that.
But yes, giant snowball killing. We'll see if we can find that. But I wanted to point out that there is basically popping straight in my head is Eric Wooten and when he comes on, when he talks about his relationship advice, which, as we've talked about many times before, is not just about romantic relationships. It's really about relationships with anybody. And a lot of times, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but when I am watching his videos or listening to him, I'm thinking about my relationship with myself a lot of the times, which is a relationship a lot of us don't realize that we have, but it's a very, very important one. And that's one that I feel like I've gotten had the most progression on personally over the last year or two. And I feel like that's been one of the biggest shifts for me, because at the end of the day, you are the one who sees the world. You are the one who filters all of your thoughts. You are the one who takes your inputs, gives them the stories that they have, and then lets that affect how you feel. You are the one who then goes out into the world and does things and says things and thinks things. So the more in touch you can be with that and the more you can control that, the better everything can be in my mind, right? So anyways, the main point is this is information from a relationship coach, but it's about so much more than just a romantic relationship. It's also true with your work relationships, your friends, and things like that. But the three pillars that he says are the most important are intentionality, personal responsibility, and community. And I thought it was worth pointing out as we talked with Danielle here about, hey, what does intentional manifesting mean to you? She said, okay, well, first off, I decided I wanted to do a thing. I thought about it. I said, hey, here's what I would like to do, and here's a little bit of how I want to do it. I want it to be a little different than the last time I tried it because I didn't like some things about the way that happened or went down. So you thought about it up front. You separated the do and the thing. And then you said, okay, I'm going to intentionally manifest, for example, these forms of exercise that I can actually do in a sustainable way, find it somewhat enjoyable at least, and actually do it, right? So she had that intentionality. She had the personal responsibility to want to do this in the first place. And oh, by the way, also set up some tracking systems that helped her keep track of, okay, how often am I doing this thing? How often am I not doing this thing? And then there's the community aspect, which was where you brought in somebody else and you said, hey, let's do this together, right? So we can, now you're helping pull that other person up or those other people up as well. But two, that's helping each of you be a little bit more responsible and making sure that you don't back out because, as you and I have both seen, on the weeks when one person backs out, it does make it a lot easier for the other person to back out, right? Especially when it's freezing cold outside.
Yep.
But yeah, so getting the intentionality, the personal responsibility, and the community aspects involved are a great way to help you manifest anything in your life, I think. So I couldn't help but point out how well you did those three of those things without maybe even recognizing it.
Well, thank you. That's cool that that those concepts or values overlap because it's like, are you manifesting change in your personal life or in your relationship life, or like it's all, I guess all the steps are very similar.
Yeah, and we talked with him about boundaries on a previous show, and he also has some YouTube videos on it as well. And that was one of the ones where I feel like a lot of us haven't really thought about or intentionally created boundaries, at least since maybe we were kids. And then one of the first time I saw his video on that, I was thinking about it through my own lens. I'm like, well, what boundaries do I have with myself? I'm like, what do I say? Like, oh, I can't do that or I shouldn't do that. Or if I'm going to cross this boundary, then I need to have that consequence. And the answer, at least at the time, was like, none. I don't give myself any boundaries. And I was like, well, maybe I should. And maybe there are certain areas where I need to have those boundaries. And maybe it's okay I don't. But that was a cool thing about watching that video one time through that lens of like, oh, okay, if I'm thinking about a relationship with myself, like, well, what are those boundaries? And, some obvious ones that come to my mind around boundaries for personal things. Well, maybe it's something about how much I'm eating, or maybe it's how much, alcohol I'm drinking or drugs I'm doing, or how much free time I'm having versus work time. Or, I start to think of what are all the good things that I would want to have lots of or do all the time, but maybe I shouldn't. And setting up those boundaries with myself could be very important. So intentional manifesting, anything shaken out of your head that we haven't touched on around intentional manifesting yet?
Well, I guess two things. I haven't fully formulated like the conversation around this yet, but my mind went there. Was like one of the other things I manifested in 2021 was like I put it out there. I was like, oh, I really want to find some like-minded, like a group where like maybe I can start creating some sense of community around like wanting to be more mindful and spiritual. And then walked into the Groovy Coop and met the owner and started creating a blog and events at the Groovy Coop with this group of entrepreneurial, metaphysical women. So, and today we have a event at the Groovy Coop tonight for the celebration of Imbolc, and we'll talk about like what that means. And yeah, to have a community event at the Groovy Coop. So
yeah, so let me explain a couple of those things.
Yeah.
So first off, the Groovy Coop is a store here in downtown McKinney, and they sell some metaphysical things like tarot cards and candles and crystals, and then they also sell kind of, I don't know, I think they're a great gift shop, if you will.
Yes.
Like you can
you
always
can find something for anyone.
everyone there. Yeah. It's like they have these socks that have these funny phrases on them. They have, you know, magnets and mugs and all these types of
Antiques,
things.
like retro.
Yeah, and it's like if you're looking for
furniture,
something, and it's
dishes.
kind of a wide range too. Like some of it's like, it's very eclectic. Like some of it's like definite like edgy, and maybe there's some strong language and things like that, or maybe it's like some religious symbols that are used in different ways or whatever. But then some of it's just like, oh, this is like an antique thing that's kind of cool, and here's some clothes that are maybe secondhand,
Yeah,
like, that
vintage
are
clothes.
kind of vintage.
Yeah.
And yeah, the owner
Tie-dye stuff.
the owner also owns a record shop around the corner, Red Zeppelin. So there's a little bit of that, I don't know, rocker vibe, if you will, but that kind of can go between the two. So yeah, so you were there and you had this idea. You wanted to intentionally manifest kind of a group of people to help you create some stuff with, and then you did that. And the group that you found, so by walking into the store and starting to talk with some of the people there, you guys ended up creating a group. What was the group called?
The Mystic Collective. And so now we have a blog, themysticcollective.com. And
Which is linked in the description. We'll also put it in the chat as well.
Yeah. And we put on an event for the first time for, I guess it was Monday, November 2nd. And it was for Samhain, or also related to the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, Halloween. So we put on that event, and it was really awesome. And so tonight will be our second event.
Yeah, so we talked about that on a previous episode. We'll see if we can find that. The Samhain, it's pronounced or it's spelled Samhain, Samhain.
Yes.
But it's another festival, a pagan festival that they celebrated in the fall, and it was cool. I remember writing something on a piece of paper and then burning it and like releasing it, and that one was related to dealing with ancestors, I believe.
Yes.
And that was kind of around the Day of the Dead type of time frame.
Yep.
So you intentionally manifested that group of women. Was there, I guess, was there anything to that really, other than just saying, hey, I want to do this, and starting to have your mind open to it? Because that's one thing we definitely talked about on the show before, which is the more you think about something, the more like you're looking for something, you'll see it show up more, right? That's just a psychological thing.
Yes. And so basically how that process went was I kind of had it in my mind, like, that I wanted to find this group of sense of community. And then I was like, oh, well, yeah, I was like, I'll just go walk by myself to the square, because I think I was looking for something like a lava lamp or some sort of piece of decor for these shelves up here. And I was like, I'll just go walk around the square and like talk to people and see what I find, and just kind of be open to what's out there. And then while I was in the Groovy Coop, this woman that I had met at the Mill House women's co-working space walked in to start selling her products at the Groovy Coop. And that's kind of that synchronicity that we've talked about before, where I recognized, oh, hey, I had just been talking about how like I wanted to put myself out there and connect with people in the community and find a group of women to like create something with potentially. And now this woman that I had this connection with, and I was just talking with the owner of the Groovy Coop about like, being an entrepreneur, and we were just having this conversation. And so it's like, once those connections start being made, then recognizing like, oh, hey, maybe this is my sign to pursue like a relationship with these women. And yeah, I guess it's kind of like you put it out there, you know what you want, and then you be open to seeing the signs of threads of like, ooh, where could I follow this opportunity, and does this line up with what I said that I was looking for? And yeah.
Yeah, there's the phrase of which thread do I pull on, and by putting stuff out, then putting stuff out there, then you are then able to see the threads that line up with that thing. And I guess one way I'm thinking about it is an analogy of you have all of these threads coming at you, and they're all this big tangled mess, and that is life. But when you decide to be intentional, when you decide you want to intentionally manifest, well, then you're saying like, okay, I'm going to go after this big red cloth thing that I'm going to create. And then all of a sudden your eyes, when it sees that tangled ball of thread, it starts to see all of the red threads that you could then start to pull out of. And yeah, maybe they're still kind of knotted and still you got to do a little work to get them out, but you know, like, okay, hey, this actually might lead me in that right direction. And maybe you pull on one and it's like, ooh, that thread's only, a quarter inch long. That's probably not it. Or maybe you'll run into some issues along the way. But I think by having that intentionality and trying to manifest it and trying to look out into the world, out into the universe and say, hey, which one of these has helped me go more in that direction? And you start to just keep doing that process and repeating it. Like, you're going to eventually move closer and closer to the thing. And oh, by the way, I'm sure you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff along the way. But also, you're going to end up meeting a bunch of people potentially that you never would have thought you would have met. And that was one of the things that we talked about with our skilled hobbies discussion the other day. And that was how it's like, hey, by doing something like this that's kind of outside of yourself, outside of your normal job, outside of your normal quote unquote day life, like, you're giving yourself a chance to be exposed to new people, new ideas, new places, new environments. So there's some other benefits of just trying to do something and trying to go out there and do it. So real quick, let's I want to just wrap up the couple of steps, because I don't know if we said that for what you did when you said, okay, I want to manifest a thing. The first thing that you did was you wrote it down. You thought about it up front, and then you wrote it down. And then the next step you did was you said, okay, you put it out there, right? And that's to allow the law of attraction to work its magic. You put it out there, and you were starting to look for the community.
And tell people.
And tell people, yeah. And you started to tell people. And then the third thing you did was you took action, right? So you thought about it, you wrote it down, you put it out there, you told people, and then you took action. You're like, all right, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to try this thing. And maybe this doesn't end up being the exact thing you want, but it seems to be pretty good so far. It seems to be working. So let's just keep doing that a little bit. And then maybe you'll need to change later on. Maybe you'll need to revector. But right now, like, you're pretty close to getting the thing that you said you wanted. And it's just a matter of saying it, writing it down, and then making it happen. And that's one of the big things I want to make sure people at home go like internalize, which is there's not that many steps a lot of times between like what you want or what some ideal would be and where you're at today a lot of times. And it depends on obviously your life situation, what all's going on. And of course it's harder for some people than other, so on and so forth. But for a lot of people, it's just a matter of saying like, oh, I want to eat better, or I want to cook better, or I want to find some friends, and I want to have meaningful relationships. Like, whatever it is, it just starts with you thinking about what it is that you want, and then start to take the steps towards going there. And that's been one of the huge powers for me of using my own research is it's just like a simple bulleted list. And I could literally have a bullet at the top and saying, what do I want? And then I could just make a bullet list of the things I want. And then let's say the bullet list one is to eat better. It's like, okay, if I want to eat better, well, what are the ways I could do that? And then I just indent and I make a couple more bullets. And then you just you break down that big, hairy problem into these small, actionable things that you can do. And then you just start doing them. And just one by one, it's like, oh, well, I want to have a better sex life. Well, okay, what are the steps to me having a better sex life? Like, literally, it's not a complicated thing. Like, you just decide what you want to do, and then you start to figure out the steps to do it. And even if they're a little wrong, you're going to learn along the way. You're going to get a little closer, and then you'll revector and you'll keep going. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the big message for me today with this intentional manifesting. So let's talk a little bit about this festival, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So what was it called again?
Imbolc. Imbolc.
Imbolc is
Yes.
the name. And yeah, so what get us started on it. What is Imbolc?
So this is a ancient pagan Celtic, possibly, holiday. I'm going to learn more about it at the event tonight as well. But I believe so it's one of the 8 sabbats of the year, which is like, I guess, a fancy word for holiday. And they're spaced evenly at 8 points throughout the year, along with the like solstices and the equinoxes. And then this one is similar to, there's one like September 1st that's mirrored on, like, if you're on whether you're in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. So like right now it's the September 1st holiday for us, for the other half of the year, or half of the world. And
there's Mabon and
yes.
Lugnasad.
Yes.
One of those two. Mabon's the one in September.
Yeah. And then I guess Imbolc became Candlemas, I think, is the Catholic holiday, possibly. And also it's relative to Groundhog Day, because it's about like the first buddings of spring. So celebrating that the darkest months of winter are now over, and we're going to start seeing more and more light as we go towards the March 21st equinox, I think. Or is that the spring solstice?
Spring solstice.
Equinox?
Yeah,
spring equinox?
There's the winter.
Yeah, it's winter solstice, summer solstice, spring equinox, fall equinox.
There you
So
go.
this is, yeah.
So basically, to kind of
Yeah.
rewrap that.
That was my brain dump of what I think I know about Imbolc so far.
I like it. So just to reference a couple things. One, these holidays, as with a lot of holidays, are based around the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars, that type of thing.
Yes.
And since
The very earliest patterns that human cultures could start to recognize and plan their harvests and festivals around.
Right. And today we just pull out our phone and it tells us what day it is. But back in the day, back way before electricity and all these types of things, people would use the stars and the planets to determine what time of year it was. Because for those who aren't aware, we are on a giant planet. Well, it's not really giant, but we're on a giant ball of rock called a planet, and it's part of a solar system, which is part of a larger universe, which all moves at a very specific way. And based on how those things move in relation to us and how we move in relation to them, different stars, constellations, planets will appear in different parts of the sky. And that varies based on where you are in the Earth. So in the northern hemisphere, right now it is spring, or actually winter going into spring. And then, but if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's actually the opposite. So it's winter here, it's summer there. And that's just because the way the Earth is tilted. The south is closer to the sun right now, and the northern hemisphere is farther away from the sun. And because we're farther away from the sun, we have shorter days, it's not as warm, and therefore we have the season of winter. And there's the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, which is December 21st. Yes. And then there's the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year, which is June 21st, not 31st, June 21st. So those are the shortest and longest day of the year, regardless of where you are in the world. But that length will change. And if you're very near a pole, it could be almost literally all day. It's all day night or all day day. But if you're like us and you're kind of halfway up, then it's just, you see a shift of a couple hours of light.
Yeah, and then I think the equinoxes, so like the spring equinox and the fall equinox, those are on the days where daylight and darkness is equal.
Oh, okay.
So like this, so Imbolc is as you're going from the darkest day of the year to where it's equal again. So it's like, it's not getting lighter every day yet, but it's getting less dark every day. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I think you
That's
had it
whatever.
until that that last
Yeah.
thing. But the spring equinox marks the start of the spring season, and that's where the northern hemisphere begins to be tilted more towards the sun, resulting in an increase in daylight hours and warming temperatures.
Mm.
So basically, it's like, all right, if you look at, I'm using my hand as a visual here. Imagine Earth is kind of like, if you're looking at it from the side, it's kind of like a teeter-totter, or what's the other name for this thing?
It's tilted on an axis.
Yeah, but what's the other name for the thing that goes up and down that could seesaw?
Okay.
Thanks for the help. Appreciate it.
Mm.
Imagine like a seesaw, a vertical seesaw, and it just starts to tilt back, and then it tilts forward and it tilts back.
No, that's not how it does.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Oh, okay.
It stays on its same axis all year. Or is that what you were going to say?
Go ahead.
Oh. And then it moves. So, like, if the microphone is the sun, then it's like, it's always at the same axis, but moving around the sun. So, like, when it's tilted like this, then the northern hemisphere is closer to it. And then when it's like this, they're both kind of like at the side. So, this is the equinoxes. And then this is when the southern hemisphere is closer to the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to describe the same thing in a different way that was a little easier to visualize.
You didn't like my microphone hand thing? This
I
is
thought that
pretty
was
good.
great. No, I mean, that was actually really good. But yes, it is a hard thing to visualize. So for those of you guys who are audio only, the point of the seesaw was saying that relative to the certain thing, if you look at like the distance, if you were to look at it in a certain view, basically, trick you use in science is like, oh, I'm going to use a different axis, or I'm going to look at it a different way so I can see how it looks. It looks kind of like a seesaw from the side, where we are is getting further away from the sun or closer to the sun. So we're kind of, if you look at it over time from a certain angle, it would kind of look like a seesaw. And when it's closer to the sun, you have the longer days, you have the more heat, more temperature, and then when it's farther away, you have the less. Now, you are correct in saying that, as far as I know. It's been a while since I've looked at this, so of course I could be messing any of this up, but and the fact that the Earth is just rotating around like this, it's not tilting back and forth, but it has that kind of effect when you look at it. So for those of you who aren't confused yet, don't worry. It's only a matter of time. The bottom line was, as we're talking about this event, which is called
Imbolc,
IMBOLC, which we've heard pronounced other ways as well.
Mm-hmm. Probably saying it wrong.
It's one of the 8 sabbat or Sabbath, something like that, in this pagan religions, and which are based on the equinoxes and the solstices of the universe, if you will, and Earth. And so, man, that was quite a little track we went down
tonight.
Yeah, so Danielle is helping host an event on this, and there will be people there who know more about that as well. Mm-hmm. And it is a great way to, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you think or believe or anything. It's like, here's a way for you to come learn a little bit about this practice that has now been done for a very long time, hundreds of years, I believe. I'm not 100% sure about that, but so. I believe it's been done for hundreds of years. And some of the things that I really liked about it were some of its purposes, right? And you mentioned it's kind of about the start of the spring. So regardless of exactly how the astrophysics work, it's about there's going to be more light, and it's going to be longer days, and it's about to be time for the harvest. And so this time was often an agricultural thing. It's like, okay, now it's about to be spring, so let's go ahead and start planting our seeds now. Let's start thinking about what we're going to want in the future, right? So then we're going to plant these seeds, and I'm using it obviously kind of metaphorically here, but also literally with agriculture, you're growing something. So you think in advance what you're going to do. You do it at the right time, and then you plant the seeds, and then you water it, and you feed it, all that kind of stuff to help make it grow. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was a great little analogy or comparison to this intentional manifesting, where it's like, all right, now is a time in your life where you might want to take that step, and you might want to be intentional about something, and you might want to try and manifest a change in your life. And if you want to use an old pagan, holiday to help help you wrap your head around that or help you get interested in it or inspired in it, then why not, right? And that's kind of the way I look at it. Is like, hey, if I want to have a quote unquote excuse to do this thing, is like, okay, well, if I have an excuse, I have a story, I have a community that I can plug into to help me do all of these things, like, why not? What's the harm?
Mhm.
So that is the pagan holiday in bulk. So here you guys can learn a little bit about these pagan things as we learn about them some ourselves. And that's just one of the things I like to do is see what are traditions, what are things that people do in different parts of the world, what are things that people believe. And I like to try and see, oh, okay, well, I like that aspect of that. I'm going to take this part and use some of that in my life. Or what is this part over there? Oh, okay. And that's been really fascinating for me as I've learned more and more about personal development and trying to make yourself a better person, all those types of things. You start to see in all of these religions, or at least a lot of these religions, they are doing some of the things that kind of encourage you to better yourself, right? And it's like, oh, well, now it's like, all right, let's get rid of the dark. Let's move into the light. And another festival that comes to mind is Holi, the Festival of Colors. And that's in, I don't know if it's exclusively Indian, but it's a Hindu festival. And that's coming up soon.
In March, I think.
In March 18th. So if you guys have not heard about that, you should definitely check it out. HOLI. It's one that is, you know, seriously, regardless of how much you agree with it or believe in it, like you can get this colored paint dust and you go dance around and you throw colored paint dust at each other and you listen to music and you eat Indian food, which is in my mind a very good addition. And it's just a lot of fun. So that's another one that's coming up here in about a month. But as we move from this winter, this cold, this dark, this lack of fertility and all these things into spring and into summer, it's cool to see how different people across the world, you know, use that type of thing. Well, this brings us to, I guess, an announcement about what we're going to be doing this week. So this week, we're doing something really interesting. So basically, we've had this course, Kickstart Your Kitchen, for a while now. But what we haven't done the most of is market this course. And one of the ways that you market a thing is you provide value. You say, hey, we're gonna give you some value, oftentimes for free. We're gonna say, oh, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna make you better. And then eventually we're gonna say, hey, all right, now, you know, we did all that stuff. We provided you all that stuff for free. You know, remember us, like we helped you do those good things that you wanted to do. Well, now here's a small ask, like go, you know, pull out your wallet and buy this thing. Because one, this thing's going to make you better. It's going to do a lot more of those things that you've already done, but at a larger scale and more intentionally. And oh, by the way, with Kickstart Your Kitchen, you have it for the rest of your life. But the first step is getting people to engage, getting people to actually do a thing, right? And so this week we are going full in on our marketing efforts, and we're going to start trying to blow this thing up. We're trying to get a whole bunch of people engaging with Helpful for Life. We're trying to get a whole bunch of people learning to cook. And why now, you asked? Well, guess what? Next Monday is Valentine's Day. And we thought that Valentine's Day would be a perfect time to teach people how to cook. We say, hey, you know what? Why not learn how to cook to impress a date right before Valentine's Day? And then instead of, you know, going out to a restaurant or feeling like you need to go buy, you know, a giant teddy bear and roses and chocolates, like, and maybe the significant other you have or want likes those things. But I think most people will say if you have a well-prepared meal that is intentionally created and intentionally manifested, and then is presented in a way where the whole experience is considered, it's hard to look at that and hard to eat that and be like, oh, that's not an amazing gift. Because when you give somebody the gift of food that you've cooked, like, they know, like, hey, you put in thought, you put in time, you put in effort to create this thing, and you did work and spent money to make this thing. And I feel like that's like one of the coolest gifts that you can give. And the nice thing about cooking is you can give that gift every day to somebody. You can give that gift multiple times a day. And so this week we're doing a little bit of a hybrid thing, you know. So this is going to be our first cohort this week, which is learning to cook to impress a date, except the weird thing we're going to do is we're actually going to have the cohort part be completely free. And this is maybe the only time we're ever going to do this, because we think it's very important for people to invest. There's a big psychological shift on when you do something for free versus when you buy something. And that's especially true in online education. There's lots and lots of really good education out there that you can get either for free or for very cheap, but yet they find that there's very low completion rates when people aren't bought in. And that's because of kind of just like the gym. Like if you go to the gym and you're like, oh, it only costs me $10 a month to go to the gym or to have a gym membership. Well, if I didn't go for a month, it's not that big a deal. I'm not going to cancel, right? Because it's just $10. But if it's more significant, if it's something you're really bought into, then that is something that has a different shift in your head. Like, oh, I need to go to get my money's worth, right? So we'll talk more about that another day. But the main point was, for this week, we have the cohort learn how to cook to impress a date. And so what we're going to do is every weeknight this week, every weeknight this week, we're going to have a different session to help you guys learn how to cook to impress a date. And it's all going to culminate on Friday night. We're going to have a cook with us. So on Friday night, we're going to have a fun event where we're going to cook a meal live. You're gonna have the ingredients ahead of time. So if you at home you want to cook with us, you can literally cook with us as we're cooking the thing. You can be here live in the chat talking about how things are going for you, asking any questions you have, and of course, as we're instructing, we're gonna give you guys tons and tons of tips. But throughout this week, we're actually going to progress, and we're going to start off with, just like we do in our course, we're going to start off with plan and shop and prep your shed up. Plan and shop and prep your setup. So we're going to say, hey, it doesn't matter if you've never cooked before in your life. Doesn't matter if your kitchen is completely empty right now. We're going to help you prep your setup. We're going to help you plan and shop. And then I believe on Wednesday we're going to do it. That's when you're going to actually start getting some practice. You're going to practice those knife skills. You're going to cut up some vegetables. We're going to help you learn how to cook this week. And we're going to give you the handful of techniques and methodologies, and we're going to give you some frameworks to help you learn within this 1 week. Just by you being intentional, you're going to learn how to cook. And it's going to be something that is going to continue to grow. And you're not going to know all of the things this week. We're not going to promise you all of that, especially because at the end of the day, you're going to have to be the one who does the work. You're going to have to be the one who learns the things. You're going to have to be the one who puts it into practice. But by the end of this week, for sure, you'll be able to cook the meal that we've got for you. And the nice thing is you're going to have complete video record of it all. And so that way you'll always have it and you'll know, okay, all right, I cooked it this time. Maybe I had an issue in that one spot, but I can go brush up on that part again. Or, oh, he said this might happen. Now, the next time I cook it, I'll do some of those other steps that help prevent it from happening. So that's what this week is meant to be. It's meant to be a time for you guys, regardless of where you're starting from, to learn how to cook. And on top of that, so we're doing that cohort all week for free. But we're also discounting the course. So we're going to be discounting Kickstart Your Kitchen, mostly because, that's the thing about marketing. Sometimes you just need a subtle shift to get people a little interested. And I think the first time and possibly the only time that we'll end up discounting this course, because as we talked about before, there's so much in there. But we're going to discount it to $69. And
Giggity.
Giggity indeed. And one of the reasons that we're doing that was, as we were trying to think about how can we get people interested, how can we get people excited, 69 was mentioned from a complete non-sexual perspective, but of course we ran with it and took it into a sexual direction because it's Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. We're also going to include some bonus content that's related to food and using food in a sexual way. So that's one little fun little spice up for you guys. And we're not 100% committing to it, but we are definitely hoping to do, the week is still young, so we'll see how things shape up. But the other thing we're hoping to do is to give you guys some additional content and help on how to throw and host a party. Because we also know that this weekend is Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And so with the Super Bowl coming up, it's a great time to show off cooking. And so, learning to cook to impress a date, yes, obviously that can be for a single person. That can also be just for yourself, kind of like we were talking about earlier when it talked about relationships. It can also be with just yourself and knowing that you took the time and effort to prepare something for you, making sure that you recognize that you are special all by yourself with nobody else. That's
Do a treat
important.
yourself date.
Treat yourself. But also, maybe you're doing it for Super Bowl. Maybe you're having a party, and maybe you can be intentional about how you create the food and how it ties into the theme, and how you help create that experience that people will remember. And it doesn't, again, it's simple, not always easy, but there's a lot of easy steps, a lot of simple steps you can take that can really make a difference in how someone feels and experiences an event.
Well, and how you feel and experience the event. Like, not, being able to have friends over, have family over, and host people, and it not be a stressful thing that like takes over your mindset for the day.
Yes, which is very important, because that's something that we've seen in our lives and our friends and our family is like when we go to an event, I'm like, wow, why are you so stressed out right now? Like, we're all here to have a good time. Like, chill. Like, what's going on? But I get it, because it can be kind of anxiety inducing, especially if it's your first time doing the thing. But that's why we're here. We're here to help you guys every step along the way. We're here to help you guys figure out the things that you need to figure out, and point out, say, hey, if you do it this way, that's probably going to stress you out. It's probably going to wind you up in a ball. But if you do it this other way, taking into a lot of the principles we talk about all the time on What the Hell is Water, is like, this is how you can learn to cook in a way that is sustainable. It's something you can do forever, something that you can end up doing every day, something you can end up enjoying, something that can be a skilled hobby for you if you want it to be. It could just be something you do for fun. It could be meditative. There's a lot of really powerful things that can come from cooking, and one of them is the ability to interact with and host others. And that was a great reminder for us this weekend, as we ended up hanging out with multiple groups of people, right? We had some family over, we had some old friends, we had some new friends, and the nice thing is we were able to entertain and cook, and we didn't even have to plan in advance, right? And so that's one of the beautiful things about our skill sets and our life that we've done it, is now we've got it to where we have our pantry, our fridge, our freezer stocked, and we can just go and say, hey, well, what are we going to cook today? Or what are we going to cook for them? Or, we were going to do A, but I'm not feeling that anymore, so let's switch over to B. And being able to do that is, it's kind of like a superpower, honestly. I think that it's a really cool thing, and I think if you don't think this is big of a deal, then maybe you haven't experienced this quite yet yourself, or maybe you just don't realize that what you are already doing is that special, because a lot of people cannot do this. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people learn how to do this for themselves, because by being able to eat better, eat what you want, tweak it to be just the way you like it, and then share that with others and have a good time and tell them about this wonderful company that did it for you and helped you out, Helpful for Life, this amazing morning show, What the Hell is Water, and of course the amazing cooking class, kickstartyourkitchen.com. So yes, there's enough shameless plugs for one day. With that, Danielle, any other last thoughts on the intentional manifesting?
Was trying to think of a challenge.
Yeah. So the challenge, I think, for today is to go look into a little bit of manifesting yourself, and maybe consider, I guess I'll kind of make it a two-prong, because that's what I like to do, Just look up the word manifesting and see some of the history, see some of the things that maybe we talked about today, some of the things we haven't talked about today. That could just be an interesting road to go down. But then the next thing would be, what is something that you are trying to manifest at home, like with yourself, with your personal life, with work? Maybe it's just with your mindset. Maybe it's around exercise. Maybe it's around food.
With a meal.
Maybe it's around getting more in touch with yourself and your thoughts and your feelings. Maybe it's around journaling. Whatever it may be, think about something that you want to be intentional about and something that you want to try and manifest. And
write it down.
Yeah, write it down. Put it out there. Tell people about it. Get some people to help you. Get that community around you. Use that intentionality. Give yourself the personal responsibility. Put the community around yourself to make it happen. And yeah, that's all it takes. So with that, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
you.